Welcome, Seeker. Some stories were meant to stay hidden. Today, we break the silence.
Look at this footage. Grainy video from a Ring camera, installed at the entrance to Cedar Valley Park. A typical sunny Sunday. A 4-year-old girl in a pink jacket with a giraffe applique is as calm as a slumbering river. She lets go of her mother's hand, takes 3 steps forward, and places her own small hand into that of a complete stranger. Finger by finger, like a key sliding into a perfectly fitted lock. She does not cry. She does not call for help. She does not even look back. She simply transitions into a new state of being. Pause, a sound of digital static, as if the tape is catching. The detectives from the ICAC Task Force, Internet Crimes Against Children, re-watched this 47-second clip 34 times. In complete silence, broken only by the creak of their leather chairs. Because it did not look like an abduction. It looked like scheduled maintenance. As if this man had simply come to perform a system update, codenamed SOPHIE. As if he were picking up a forgotten order from a coffee shop, not even needing to give the number. And the strangest part, the detail that drove senior investigator Holmes, a former Marine, to the brink. The girl was smiling. Not with joy, not with fear. Functionally. The corners of her lips were turned up just enough to meet the expectations of a sunny day. She was waiting for him. She knew someone was coming for her. And in the man's left hand, large and covered by a black leather glove, a tiny object glinted in the sun. Later, magnified 400%, technicians would identify it, a miniature figurine of a bird, carved from bone or white plastic. Sunday in Cedar Valley did not just happen, it was manufactured. Like premium social media content. It was the taste of a lactose-free vanilla latte from a paper cup labeled, decomposes in 90 days, the smell of a freshly mown lawn trimmed by a robotic mower, and the distant, perfectly modulated barks of purebred dogs. For Anna Miller, this predictable hum was the embodiment of the American dream, version 2. 1. Safe, sterile, and delivered by subscription. She sat on a bench made of recycled plastic, bearing the logo of a local charity, turning her face to the soft, leaf-filtered sun, and listened to her daughter, Sophie, laugh in a sandbox filled with kinetic sand. That laugh was her personal unit test for the stability of the universe. As long as the sound passed, the world was working. Sophie was in her favorite pink windbreaker from the Gap, bought on sale. A cheerful giraffe adorned the back. Anna caught sight of that bright patch of color in her peripheral vision every 5 seconds. It was her own primitive, maternal security protocol, hardwired into her subconscious deeper than any app. A glance at her Instagram feed, the pink blur was by the swings. A sip of coffee, the pink blur was by the seashell slide. A reply to her divorce lawyer's text, the pink blur was digging a hole next to a boy in a blue cap. The world felt as unshakable as the concrete slab beneath the playground's soft surface. High in the sky, the contrail of a plane headed for Chicago stretched out slowly. Anna felt the kind of peace that exists only in affluent suburbs, where the biggest problem is someone's untrimmed lawn, and the most frightening crime is a suspicious, unmarked van that turns out to be an organic vegetable delivery service. Anna. Hello. Earth to Anna. Did I lose you in a state of nirvana? A voice chirped, sounding like an automated greeting from a smart speaker. It was Madison Parker, one of those perfect moms whose children always look like they stepped out of a catalog for sustainable kids' clothing, and whose bags are always stocked with hand sanitizer, SPF 50+ sunscreen, and a quinoa snack. She was pushing a state-of-the-art, $3,000 stroller that could analyze air quality and stream white noise, and she looked as flawless as if she just stepped off the page of that same catalog. Hi, Madison. Sophie had a cold last week, so we had to miss class, Anna replied politely, performing another check-in. The pink blur was in place, building a tower. Oh, the poor thing. Madison made the appropriately sympathetic face. Same story with Luke. Daycare is just a virus incubator. We switched to probiotic drops and aromatherapy with tea tree oil. I'll send you the link. The conversation was light, meaningless, and lulling. The usual social noise that substitutes for real connection, a discussion of new Montessori schools with bilingual programs, Halloween plans, organic pumpkins, handmade costumes, only dye-free candies, and a quiet war with a neighbor who kept using the shared charging station for his Tesla. Anna nodded and agreed, but her internal radar, ancient and paranoid, continued to skim the playground with the methodical rhythm of a metronome. A glance at the pink blur. Sophie was saying something to the boy, he nodded. A glance at Madison. She was complaining about the new Swedish nanny who meditated too often. A glance at the pink blur. Sophie was reaching for a blue, star-shaped sand mold. A glance at Madison. She was pulling out a smartphone in a case featuring a pop art portrait of her own family. Oh, you have to see this. Madison clapped her hands, her rose gold bracelets chiming melodically. Last night, during that sacred hour after the kids were in bed, my husband tried to assemble this ridiculous grill from IKEA. God, it was an epic fail. He got stuck in the box, literally. I filmed it, posted it to TikTok with the hashtag #dadlife, and it already has 200,000 views. Guess who? A micro-influencer now. Madison laughed, holding out her phone. The screen glowed brightly, offering a dopamine hit in the form of strangers' approval. Anna leaned toward the screen. For only 3 seconds. A 15-second clip, her husband, red with exertion, trying to free his hand from the cardboard trap, the kids' laughter echoing in the background. A silly, sweet, domestic moment. Sincere, infectious laughter from behind the camera. That's just crazy, Madison, Anna smiled, handing the phone back. Her lips stretched into the correct shape, her facial muscles executed the social pattern. She raised her eyes to find her pink blur again in the kaleidoscope of colorful jackets and caps, her beacon, her reference point. But the pink blur was no longer there. The sandbox was there. The boy in the blue cap was there. The blue, star-shaped mold lay on the sand, filled. But the space that Sophie had occupied 3 seconds ago was empty. Utterly, physically, absolutely empty. Like a frame cut from reality itself. At first, Anna was not afraid. Fear was too strong, too improper an emotion for such a place on such a day. In towns like Oak Ridge, children do not go missing. They might run to the seashell fountain to chase a sunbeam. They might hide in the plastic tunnel on the playground, turning it into a secret cave. They do not vanish. They temporarily change their location. Sophie. Anna called, and her own voice sounded strangely loud in her ears. She stood up, and the paper cup of latte slipped from her weak fingers, leaving a brown stain on the perfect asphalt. Sophie, honey, stop playing hide and seek. Come out. It's time to go, sweetie. Madison was still talking, her lips moving, but the sound of her voice had suddenly become flat, monotonous, like an automated response from a service center. It was just background noise against the growing hum in Anna's temples. She took 10 steps toward the sandbox. Her legs felt like cotton, the ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. The boy in the blue cap was still there, lost in his own world. His sandcastle with its crenellated walls was there. But Sophie was not. Hey, buddy, Anna knelt before the boy. She balled her trembling hands into fists and pressed them into her knees, trying to hide the tremor that was rising from the very core of her being. "Did you see where the little girl went? In the pink jacket, with the giraffe on the back. She was right here with you." The boy slowly looked up from his castle. He had large, blue, perfectly clear eyes. And in them was a strange, unnervingly adult and calm gaze. The gaze of someone observing a dull experiment. "She left with the men," he answered in an even, toneless voice, as if he were reporting the weather. "He said he had her favorite doll. The one that can blink. He said it was in the car." Anna's heart did not drop, did not stop. It simply plummeted into a frigid, bottomless abyss where there was no sound, only an all-consuming cold. In the Western world, every child is taught the stranger danger rule from their first day of preschool, with red letters on posters, with cartoons, with stories. Never, you hear me, never talk to strangers. Do not take candy from them, do not get in their car, do not believe them when they say they know your mom. Sophie knew it by heart. She was a cautious, even timid girl who hid behind her mother's leg at the sight of the mailman. What men, sweetie? What did he look like? Where did they go? The words flew from Anna in a choked, almost screaming whisper. She unconsciously gripped the boy's shoulders, her fingers digging into the fabric of his jacket. Behind her, she heard Madison, her monologue finally broken, speaking into her phone in a cracking voice. "Yes, I'm calling about a child is missing. Cedar Valley Park." "A nice one," the boy whispered, and his lips trembled almost imperceptibly, as if he were trying to reproduce a smile but had forgotten how. He smelled like candy. And dust. He smelled like candy dust. That absurd, childlike description was enough for the ice in Anna's veins to crack, giving way to a surge of panicked adrenaline. 5 minutes later, the park, that idyllic set piece, was filled with foreign, sharp sounds. 2 SPD, small-town police department, patrol cars, white with blue stripes, blocked both exits to the parking lot, turning it into a trap. Flashing blue lights reflected in the windows of nearby houses, shattering the Sunday peace. Officers in dark blue uniforms, serious and weighed down by their gear despite the warm day, began methodically questioning the few witnesses. Anna stood leaning against the hood of a police car, waiting. She waited for the sky to erupt with the roar of helicopters equipped with thermal imagers. For every phone within a 100-mile radius, from smartphones to smartwatches, to buzz with the hissing, unmutable sound of an Amber Alert bearing her daughter's face. For mobile carriers to send out mass texts. For electronic signs on the highways to start flashing. For the system, the enormous, all-powerful machine of protection, to launch at full capacity. But time flowed on, viscous and sticky like syrup. 15 minutes passed. 20. On her phone, clutched in a sweaty palm, were 3 missed calls from her sister and a new text from Madison. "Hang in there, sweetie. It'll be okay." But the Amber Alert never came. The silence from the system was deafening. "Officer." Anna pushed herself off the hood and grabbed the sleeve of an older sergeant with graying temples and a nameplate that read Vance. He was speaking into his radio but turned to her. "Why is not there an alert? My daughter, Sophie Miller, 4 years old, a stranger took her. It's been 25 minutes. Why is the system silent?" Sergeant Vance looked at her. And in his gaze, professionally neutral, Anna saw not alarm, not urgency, but a strange, almost sympathetic embarrassment. As if he were looking at someone who insisted the earth was flat. "Ma'am, we re-verifying the details and circumstances," his voice was low, soothing as a tranquilizer. "To activate the state Amber Alert protocol, certain specific, clear conditions must be met. We have a witness who states that your daughter left voluntarily, of her own free will, with a man who, he says, she may have known. We re-pulling camera footage now, checking databases. We need to rule out the possibility of a family conflict, a misunderstanding. Please, calm down. We redoing everything according to protocol. Calm down. Anna could not believe her ears. The sound of her own voice seemed wild, belonging to another woman. A stranger took her. She's 4 years old. What does voluntarily mean at 4 years old? She could not have left voluntarily. She's afraid of the dark in her own room. What conditions? What cameras? She was here, and now she's not. She did not know that at that very moment, in the State Dispatch Center, in a room bathed in the blue light of monitors, an electronic request to activate an Amber Alert for case #734-22, Sophie Miller, was automatically scanned, flagged, system error, criteria mismatch. Source distrusted, and, with a silent click of an algorithm, moved to a digital recycle bin. 45 seconds later, the bin was purged. The only record of the request remained in the logs, marked false alarm/family incident. The system had not made a mistake. It had simply made a decision. 30 miles east of Cedar Valley, in a loft that occupied the entire top floor of an abandoned printing press, Daniel Hargreaves sat in a chair resembling a spaceship's command capsule, facing a wall of 7 monitors. He wore a rumpled t-shirt with the faded logo of the University of Leeds and noise-canceling headphones that muffled even the ticking of the clock. The air smelled of ozone, dust, and cold coffee from a thermos. Daniel was known in certain, very dark corners of the darknet by the handle Ghost Hunter. He did not hunt the spirits of the dead. He hunted ghosts in the machine, the holes, the artifacts, the noise in the security systems of so-called smart cities. His specialty was not hacking but data archaeology. He excavated what was supposed to have been permanently erased. On the central monitor, amidst a waterfall of code, a red indicator blinked, simple and alarming as a lighthouse beacon. Alert, packet loss. Node 742. Grid, Cedar Valley. Duration, 003-17. Anomaly score, 9. August 10th. Subsystem, Municipal CCTV Cloud. Status, Integrity Breach, Soft. That noise again, Daniel grumbled, leaning back in his chair. His fingers were already flying across the keyboard. 3rd Sunday in a row. But today, it's not just dropping packets. Today, someone is orchestrating. He entered the county's secure municipal camera cloud storage. For him, it was like walking into his own apartment. He had seen thousands of similar micro-incidents across the country, marking them on his private map, sudden, brief losses of data packets, failures in facial recognition, the blinding of LiDAR sensors in places where, statistically, nothing should have been happening. But today's noise from Cedar Valley was different. It had a structure. It began at exactly 14:17. The anomaly peaked at 14:18. It faded by 14:20. As if something had entered the coverage zone, performed an action, and left, neatly wiping its digital footprints on the way out. Daniel launched his own recovery script, the Bonesetter, as he called it. It did not restore lost data, it searched for its echo in adjacent packets, in metadata, in the cache of neighboring nodes. Slowly, pixel by pixel, an image began to emerge on the screen, like a secret message appearing on blotter paper. Blurry, fragmented, but readable. He saw a woman, Anna, on a bench, then the same woman running in panic, her mouth open in a silent scream. He saw police cars, tiny as toys. And then he found what he was looking for. A parking lot camera, aimed at the entrance, had recorded 2 more frames than the main system. A dark, matte, late-model Ford Explorer, no markings, no visible plates. But as the vehicle passed a stationary automatic license plate reader, ALPR, the reader did not just fail to recognize the plates. According to the logs, it received a command to enter low power mode at the kernel level of its firmware. 7 seconds. The exact duration of the drive-by. It did not break. It did not glitch. It went to sleep on command. Holy shit, Daniel breathed, rubbing his unshaven chin. A familiar, hated chill ran down his spine. This is not your local amateur creeps. This is not even FBI Cyber Division level. This is Tavola level. Or someone who has the keys to the kingdom. He unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk, a chaos of cables and hard drives. There, under a stack of old notebooks, lay a metal cigar box. Inside, on a velvet bed, were scans of newspaper clippings from the last 40 years, printed on heavy paper, and 1 physical artifact. Disappearances of children in London, 1979, Paris, 1988, Sydney, 1995, Prague, 2003. Not high-profile cases, but quiet, strange ones. Children who had left on their own. And everywhere in his notes, the same digital signature he had learned to recognize. A perfect black spot, not a hole, but a patch. Someone was not just deleting data. Someone was stitching a perfectly generated, seamless background in its place. Daniel picked up the artifact, an old, tarnished FBI token. It had belonged to his father, Henry Hargreaves, an analyst in the organized crime division in the 80s. On the front, an eagle and a badge number. On the back, almost indecipherable, scratched with a nail or a pin, was a strange symbol, an equilateral cross enclosed in a perfect circle. Not decoration, but a brand. Before his death from a lung cancer that consumed him in 3 months, old Henry, already on morphine, had grabbed 20-year-old Daniel's hand and hissed, his gaze cloudy but incredibly sharp, "If you see time on a video, freeze. If you see the frame start to stick, run, Danny. Do not dig. Do not look for them. They are not people. They function. And they find you themselves when they decide you the next variable." Daniel looked at the photo that was already starting to appear in local Facebook and Nextdoor groups. Missing girl. Sophie Miller. In the picture, Sophie was squinting in the sun in that same pink jacket. She had dimples and a strangely adult, assessing gaze. He looked at the token, at the symbol. Then at the lines of code describing the sensor being put to sleep. "Sorry, Dad," he said quietly, his voice raspy in the silent loft. "But I'm tired of running. And I know they did not just take other people's kids." He loaded Sophie's photo into his system, connecting it to a catalog of public and semi-public cameras from apps like Neighbors. Then he opened a console with a black screen and a green cursor and typed a command he had not used in years, not since the case of his younger brother, Elias, who disappeared in 2009 during a school trip to the Science Museum. Execute, Cerberus Protocol. Scope, 50-mile radius. Target, vehicle, Ford Explorer, dark. Facial recognition, secondary. Priority, data seam detection. He pressed enter. The hum of the servers around him intensified, shifting from a steady tone to an aggressive roar. The Cerberus search virus began its work, ready to hack, fool, or bribe every smart device within a 50-mile radius to find that one patch in reality. To find the Ford Explorer that did not exist. The evening at the Millers' home in the suburb of Oak Ridge was nothing like the evenings shown on the news during tragedies. There was no crowd of reporters on the perfect lawn. No vans with television antennas that looked like spiny metal insects. Not even any neighbors with casseroles and empty words of comfort. There was only a strange, vacuum-like silence, broken by the ticking of the kitchen wall clock, a gift from her ex-husband that now seemed like an artifact from another life. Anna sat at the kitchen island, clutching a cold cup of mint tea. The tea was as cold as well water, but she could not feel it. The police had left an hour ago, leaving behind only a stack of glossy business cards and a promise delivered by Sergeant Vance with the air of a man giving tomorrow's forecast. "We'll do everything we can, Mrs. Miller. Stay by your phone." But Anna sensed the emptiness behind those words. There was no hunter's fire in his eyes, tracking prey. There was only a calm, professional fatalism. He looked at her not as the mother of a victim, but as a patient with a rare, incurable, and, above all, inconvenient diagnosis. The doorbell rang. The sound was soft, melodic, like in a smart doorbell commercial. Not insistent, but polite. Anna flinched, her stiff fingers uncurling. The cup hit the faux marble countertop with a dull thud. On the porch, framed by the frosted glass of the side panel, were two silhouettes. Sharp, straight, as if carved from gray granite. Anna opened the door. Two people stood before her. A man and a woman. Around 40, perhaps a little older, but their ages were hard to pin down. Their faces were smooth, well kept, and utterly devoid of the kind of characteristic features one wants to remember. They wore impeccable suits the color of wet asphalt, which looked expensive yet were completely unmemorable, like camouflage for the corporate jungle. "Mrs. Miller." The woman smiled gently, almost tenderly. The smile was symmetrical, practiced. "My name is Evelyn. This is my colleague, Mark. We're from the Family Outreach Foundation. The county's Department of Social Services sent us. We're here to help you through this difficult period." Evelyn's voice was low and velvety, like a whisper in a library. "Help." Anna's voice came out hoarse and torn, as if she had not spoken in days. "I do not need help. I need my daughter. I've already told the police everything." Of course, Mark nodded. His voice was a deep, soothing baritone, like white noise from a meditation app. "We completely understand. That's exactly why we're here. Our role is to coordinate between the police, volunteer organizations, and, most importantly, to take on all the administrative and communication burdens. All those calls, the press, the legal formalities. We will free you from all that, so you can focus all your energy on what's most important, yourself and hope." They entered the house without an explicit invitation, but they did it so naturally, with such a soft, irrefutable confidence, that Anna could not find the strength to object. Her will, already fractured by panic, felt fluid and helpless against their firm, calm purpose. Over the next hour, they gently but inexorably filled the space. Evelyn, taking off her jacket to reveal an equally flawless blouse, brewed new tea, a calming blend, tested by our psychologists. Mark walked through the house, checking security. He flicked light switches, touched the locks on the windows, and nodded approvingly at the smart home system. They spoke quietly, almost in whispers, their words weaving into a hypnotic, monotonous background. Evelyn sat beside her on the sofa, placing her palm over Anna's hand. Her skin was dry and unnaturally cold, like a reptile's. "We need to ask you a few questions for our internal protocol. This will help us structure our support more effectively. You were undergoing treatment, taking antidepressants last year, correct? After the end of your relationship. Anna jerked her head up, pulling her hand away. What does that have to do with anything? That was 1.5 years ago. The course of treatment is finished. I'm fine. Oh, it's just a formality. Evelyn smiled again, her eyes remaining as still as glass. You must understand, the police are unfortunately often skeptical of statements from individuals with notes of emotional instability in their history. It's unfair, but it's the reality. Sometimes, when we under extreme stress, our minds, in order to protect us, can fill in the picture. Are you absolutely certain you saw this man? Or could it have been just a silhouette, a shadow, an image born of panic? Perhaps the girl simply ran off, and your imagination, fueled by exhaustion and past experience. Anna stared at Evelyn, and at that moment, for the first time in this entire nightmarish day, she was gripped not by hysterical terror, but by a chilling, diamond-hard horror of realization. These people had not come to help her search. They had come to plant a poisonous seed of doubt in the soil of her memory. To make her question her own sanity. To turn her from a victim into an unreliable witness. Into a problem that was not to be solved, but isolated. Daniel Hargreaves' loft hummed like a beehive preparing to swarm. The rhythmic hum of the servers was his white noise, the music of his solitude. On the central monitor, a live, breathing map of the state unfolded, dotted with hundreds of blue lights. These were private doorbell cameras, baby monitors, backyard security cams, everything he had managed to hack and connect to his web in the last 2 hours. Each light was a small piece of someone's privacy, sacrificed for his hunt. Cerberus had worked tirelessly. And it had yielded a result. Got you, Daniel hissed, leaning closer to the screen. The dark Ford Explorer had flashed past a neighbor's system camera 5 miles from the park, on the quiet Maple Drive. The camera was aimed at a lawn, but in the left corner of the frame, the fender of the car appeared for a fraction of a second. Daniel's recognition algorithm, trained to look not for objects but for distortions around them, had latched onto that blurry, pixelated tail. Then another trace, at the entrance to the abandoned Blackwood Industrial Zone, where the security camera of a defunct warehouse, powered by a solar panel, had recorded a clear but fleeting silhouette. Daniel was tracking a ghost, and the ghost was beginning to take shape. He opened a direct feed from a camera at a Shell gas station, which the vehicle, according to its trajectory, should have passed. At the 1542 timestamp, the car, a dark smudge, approaches the intersection near the station. At 1543, the camera's screen fills not with static or interference, but with a perfect, thick, digital black. At 1544, the blackness vanishes, and the road is empty again, as if nothing had happened. No skid marks, no movement in the adjacent lanes. Not jamming, Daniel muttered, his fingers already flying across the keyboard, launching new tools. Splicing. They not jamming the signal to make it disappear. They editing the data stream on the fly, in real time, and stitching a perfectly generated background in place of the removed footage. It's like a surgeon who removes a tumor and grows healthy tissue over it so perfectly you not see the seam. He ran a deep analysis of the metadata, not what was visible, but how it was formed. His program, The Anatomist, searched for digital seams, microscopic inconsistencies in pixel patterns, tiny compression artifacts that remain after any edit, no matter how perfect. And he found them. But they were not the marks of a human hand, hasty or careless. They were the signature of an algorithm. A perfect, cold, incredibly fast algorithm. An algorithm that learned from its own mistakes, making its work cleaner each time. Suddenly, without warning, his second monitor, the one scrolling with logs, went dark. Then the third, with the map. On the central screen, over the image from the gas station, a symbol began to slowly materialize, as if emerging from the depths of the screen. An equilateral cross enclosed in a perfect circle. It was not drawn on top, it was composed of thousands of lines of his own green-on-black code. The code reconfigured, flowed, forming the image right before his eyes. It was beautiful. Lethally beautiful. A voice emanated from his high-fidelity speakers. But it was not a human voice. It was a compilation, a fusion of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of different voices, male, female, old, young, children. They all spoke in unison, creating an eerie, perfectly balanced choir. It held no emotion. Only information. Daniel Hargreaves. Stop. You are searching for answers in a system we created to protect people like you. To protect order. Protect me. Daniel shot forward, grabbing his microphone. His voice trembled with rage. You took a child. You took my brother. Elias. In 2009. I know it was you. The choir voice replied without a pause, without a change in tone. We do not take, Daniel. We return lost assets to service. Sophie Miller possesses cognitive and genetic potential whose statistical significance far exceeds the parameters of the Oak Ridge environment. She will become part of the architecture of something greater. You desire stability for the world, do you not? An absence of wars, economic collapses, chaotic revolutions. We are the equation that maintains the balance. We are the footnote that prevents history from crumbling into a meaningless collection of letters. Who are you? Daniel shouted, jumping up from his chair. Name yourselves. We are the ones who write the footnotes. We are already everywhere. And we are already here. Your search will end now. The screen flared with an unbearable white light, not digital, but somehow physically bright, as if a flashbang had detonated in the room. Simultaneously, all of Daniel's systems, the servers, the monitors, even the LED strip under his desk, shut down with a quiet, collective click. The hum of the servers was replaced by a deafening, oppressive silence. The loft was plunged into darkness, broken only by the dim glow of streetlights through the tall windows. Daniel stood in the middle of the room, breathing heavily, his heart pounding in his throat. His ears were ringing. He was not afraid of being hacked. He was afraid of what had just happened. They had not tried to stop him with brute force. They had demonstrated their omniscience and omnipotence. They knew everything about him. They knew where he was. They knew about his brother. And they were letting him continue not because they could not stop him, but because, perhaps, his search was part of their calculations. Or because he, without knowing it, was already the next variable in their equation. The target. In the dark, his hand found the edge of the desk, then the cold metal of his father's token. He clenched it in his fist, feeling the sharp edges of the symbol on the back. Run. Like his father had said. No. He was in too deep. And he had remembered too much. Daniel knew only one person who might have come face to face with them, and not only survived but also retained his sanity, or what was left of it. Edward Reed, a former senior analyst for the NSA's Signals Intelligence Division, a man who was both a legend and a ghost. He had disappeared from public view in the mid-90s, officially for health reasons, unofficially after insisting on the existence of an internal circuit within government communications, a circuit that spoke to itself in a language not meant for human ears. Reed lived in Beacon Hill, Boston, in a house that was less a home and more a fortress of red brick and old money. The house was set back from the street, behind a tall cast iron fence and a wall of ancient oaks, as if turning its back on the entire 21st century. A housekeeper, a woman in her 60s with a face carved from granite, silently let Daniel in and led him through a series of rooms that smelled of wax, old books, and quiet. Edward Reed was in the library, sitting in a deep armchair by a fireplace where logs smoldered, despite the season. He was surrounded not by monitors but by thousands of paper books lining shelves that reached the ceiling. In a world of digital streams, he had chosen a paper glacier. It could not be edited remotely, only burned. "You relate, Daniel," Reed said without turning around. He was examining an old, yellowed star chart through a magnifying glass with a mother-of-pearl handle. His voice was as dry as autumn leaves. They've already begun the processing protocol on the mother. The administrative fog phase. Soon she'll cease to be a problem. She'll become a statistical anomaly. Daniel, still reeling from the shock in his loft, sank into the chair opposite him. "You know about Anna Miller?" "How?" "I know the protocol." Reed slowly set down the magnifying glass and turned. His face was etched with deep wrinkles, but his eyes, clouded by cataracts, held an incredible, piercing sharpness. It's called administrative removal. When the system, with a capital S, requires a person with a specific set of parameters, genetic, neurological, psychographic, they are simply extracted from their current context. To outsiders, it looks like a tragedy, an accident, a runaway, or, in the most elegant cases, a medical error or a self-inflicted incident. But in reality, it's an inventory of resources. Human resources. Reed picked up a thin porcelain cup from the small table and took a tiny sip. "Did you see the symbol? The cross and the circle?" Daniel nodded silently, taking out his father's token. Reed glanced at it and gave a dry, soundless chuckle. "The mark of the Order of Stability. Or, as they call themselves in internal memos, the curators. They are older than you can imagine. They believe that humanity is a beautiful but extremely careless and dangerous child who cannot be trusted with the matches of its own genius. So they select the brightest, most special children, not always based on intellect, sometimes for empathy, for rare forms of synesthesia, for the fearlessness gene, and raise them in their incubators. There, they are forged not into leaders of nations, but into caretakers of systems. The ones who truly regulate capital flows, write social media algorithms, compile election forecasts, quell some conflicts and ignite others, all for a single purpose, to maintain a manageable, predictable status quo. A global stasis, free of catastrophes. And my brother. Elias, he's there. Daniel's voice trembled, betraying the boy who had never come to terms with his loss. Elias Hargreaves, Reed recited the name as if reading from a transcript, subject 703, status, optimized, category, architect analyst. Yes, he's there. But the brother you remember is gone, Daniel. He has become a function. It's possible his division is editing the very footage from the gas station you were trying to analyze. Perhaps he is watching you right now, feeling a mild curiosity, a scientific interest, in how his emotionally unstable older brother is playing detective. The words struck like a hammer on an anvil. Daniel felt everything inside him tighten. Why do you know all this? Why are you still alive? Because I did in time what your father did not. Reed leaned back in his chair. I did not try to expose them. I gathered my evidence and then I proposed a deal. My silence in exchange for my life and this house, my cage with velvet walls. I am a living archive, Daniel. A warning to those who dig too deep. He reached for a desk drawer and pulled it open. It smelled of mothballs and old paper. He took out an envelope of thick, yellowed paper, sealed with a wax seal bearing the same mark, the cross in the circle. Coordinates. An old base in Maine, codenamed Echo 4. They used it in the 80s as a transit point and an archive. It's empty now, abandoned. But the walls remember. The servers, if they're still alive, hold the logs. If you want to see the face of the monster not in a mirror, but in its old photographs, go there. Daniel took the envelope. The paper was rough to the touch. And what happens when I find the truth? Reed looked at him, and something akin to pity flickered in his cloudy eyes. You will cease to be an observer. You will become a variable in their equation. They will begin to calculate you. And when the system begins to calculate you, sooner or later it offers you a choice: become part of the algorithm, or be reduced like an unnecessary parenthesis. The way your father was reduced. Lung cancer in a non-smoker who worked with microfilm archives, a very convenient coincidence. Daniel stood, tucking the envelope into the inner pocket of his jacket. He felt its weight, like the weight of a gun. "Thank you," he said hollowly. "Do not thank me." Reed looked away, picking up his magnifying glass and chart again. "I'm not giving you a weapon. I'm giving you a pass to your own execution. Now go. And, Daniel, if you see Elias, tell him old Reed still remembers his childhood handwriting. And is sorry." Daniel left the library, the house, the kingdom of frozen time. Outside, it was an ordinary evening. Cars drove by, lights were on in the windows of neighboring houses, someone was laughing on a terrace. Somewhere, in another state, in a town called Oak Ridge, a woman named Anna was having tea with people who were erasing her daughter from reality. And not a single phone had ever received an Amber Alert. The world was working. Perfectly. Silently. And Daniel realized that he was possibly the last person in this world who could still see the tiny, digital cracks on its glossy surface. And those cracks led to the dark woods of Maine. Before heading to Maine, Daniel made one more detour. Reed's envelope contained more than just the coordinates for Echo 4. On the back, in nearly invisible pencil strokes, was an address in the industrial zone of South Boston and a strange phrase: "Look not for the servers, but for the bones. The bones remember longer." The place was called Biotex Diagnostics, a faded sign on a brick building that looked like an old factory. The windows were boarded up, the doors barred with grates. Officially, bankrupt since the late 90s. For Daniel, armed with lockpicks and a portable RF scanner, it was like entering a tomb. Inside, it smelled of mold, rust, and something else, a Swedish chemical scent that had seeped into the very walls. His flashlight beam picked out not rows of computers, but long lab tables cluttered with instruments he barely recognized, old electroencephalographs with a forest of wires, rooms with Gesell mirrors for observing infants, sterilizers. This was not a computer lab. It was a biological one. On the wall of the main hall hung a chalkboard. A thick layer of dust covered it, but beneath it, traces of chalk were visible. Daniel carefully wiped his palm across the surface, sweeping the dust away. Schematics, formulas, and strange diagrams appeared. And words, written in a neat, teacher-like hand: *project, LYRA. Objective: identification and cataloging of neuro-linguistic patterns in subjects exhibiting signs of cross-modal synesthesia, sound, color, number form. Hypothesis: these patterns are markers of heightened adaptability to complex systems. Method: imprinting through associative chains, object-image emotion. Asterisk below was a list. A column of names, dates, codes. His eyes caught on a familiar one: Subject 703, Hargreaves, Elias. Age, 10. Rorschach response, Consistent association of blot number 3 with the concept of a walled garden. Accepted into the architect program. Daniel recoiled as if from an electric shock. They were not just taking smart kids. They were looking for a specific type of mind. Children who saw gardens in ink blots, not monsters. Who heard the colors of equations. Sophie. What did she see in her scribbles? In a far corner, he found a room with a safe. The door had been pried open long ago. Inside, there were no documents, only film archive boxes. And one small, personal item, a child's shoe, brown, with a Velcro strap. A size 11. On the inside, in faded ink, E.H. September. His brother's shoe. A bone that remembered. He picked up the shoe. His hand trembled. It was the first physical, tangible trace of his brother in all these years. Not pixels, not lines in a log, but leather, scuffed at the little toe. From his breast pocket, a disposable phone, bought for cash at a roadside store, chirped. It had a single anonymous message, sent to a defunct forum Daniel used as a drop box. The message consisted of 2 words and a set of numbers he decoded as coordinates in Maine, the same ones from the envelope. And the signature, "They are erasing the pink. Help. A. Anna." She had made contact. Through the fog. It meant their methods had not completely worked yet. Or it was a trap. He put the shoe in his backpack, next to his laptop and hardware keys. Now he had not only a digital mission, but a human one. And an enemy that operated not with fear, but with cold, biological rewriting. The Vermont mountains were as beautiful as a postcard you could never send. The quiet reflection center was situated in a glass and cedar lodge on the edge of a nature preserve. There were no fences, only cameras disguised as birdhouses and quiet, unobtrusive security, men in field shirts who always smiled and knew your name. Anna Miller was assigned the contemplation suite. It was a meticulous, down to the last detail replica of her living room in Oak Ridge, the same IKEA sofa, the same rug, the same lamp. Only the walls were bare of photographs. Not a single one. In their place hung abstract canvases in pastel tones. Emptiness wrapped in comfort. Every day began the same way. At 8 a.m., a vitamin cocktail, a thick, sweetish, honey-colored drink. 20 minutes after drinking it, the world became soft and pliable, and thoughts grew viscous, like molasses. Then came a session in a virtual reality headset. Not games, but psychogeographic reconstructions. Evelyn's voice sounded not from speakers but directly inside her head, enveloping her like warm water. Today, we'll return to the park. But let us not rush. Remember the details. Was Sophie wearing a hat? In VR, Anna saw the park. Perfectly rendered, sunny, but too clean. Too quiet. No hat. Just the jacket. The jacket. What color was it, Anna? Pink. Her own voice sounded distant in her ears. Pink. Or perhaps peach. You always loved the color peach for her. Remember that dress we bought for her birthday? In the VR scene, the jacket on the girl's avatar shimmered, its color bleeding from bright pink to a soft peach. Yes, maybe. Anna agreed, her wool melting under the drip feed of the cocktail and the hypnotic voice. And the man. Are you sure he was there? Perhaps it was the gardener, trimming the bushes. Or the shadow of the flagpole. Look. Anna looked. The figure of the man on the edge of her virtual vision grew transparent, blurry, then vanished altogether. In his place appeared a man in a green uniform with a lawnmower. No, no, he was there. Anna tried to resist, but the words drowned in cotton wool. You were very tired then, Anna. After the divorce, the therapy. Sometimes the psyche creates defense mechanisms. To explain the unexplainable. To fill the void that formed when you realized you did not want to be a mother. Do you remember those feelings? It was the most subtle, most cruel blow. They were not just erasing the memory of the event. They were replacing it with a new truth, a truth about herself as an unreliable, broken woman who had invented a daughter to piece together her shattered life. One night, waking from a nightmare in which the color pink was screaming, Anna found a broken pencil stub under her mattress, apparently forgotten by a previous guest. And on the wallpaper behind the headboard, where the light did not reach, she began to make notes. Not a coherent text, but fragments. Giraffe. Jacket. Giraffe on back. Men smelled of dust. Sweet dust. Sophie took his hand. Willingly. Why willingly? These were her anchors. Her bones in the digital stream. Every night she added a line, risking everything. And with each line, fear did not turn to despair but crystallized into a cold, sharp resolve. They wanted to erase her daughter. She would write her onto the walls of this beautiful prison. She sent the message to Daniel using a method she had observed from a young therapist who had naively left his laptop unlocked for 5 minutes. A short, desperate signal into the void. And she waited. In her new, rewritten reality, that waiting was the only thing that felt real. The drive to Maine was long and deliberately analog. Daniel drove an old pickup truck from the late 90s, bought with cash. It had no GPS, no Bluetooth, not even an onboard computer. Just an engine, gasoline, and a paper map. In a world where every chip was an informant, anonymity had become an act of guerrilla warfare. The coordinates led him deep into a forest near the town of Ellsworth. The pines stood like a solid wall, the asphalt gave way to a dirt road, and then to a barely visible track. And there, almost completely swallowed by young undergrowth, stood a windowless concrete cube. Echo 4. It did not look like a secret base. It looked like a giant tombstone. The rust-covered door was not locked. A padlock hung on the hasp, but the bolt was thrown. Asterisk, they were waiting, asterisk, Daniel thought. Inside, silence reigned, broken only by the hum of some ancient, low-frequency ventilation. The air was dry and cold. To his surprise, emergency LEDs flickered overhead, apparently powered by a subterranean geothermal generator. The hall was filled with racks of equipment that looked like exhibits from a computer history museum, massive reels of magnetic tape, monitors with convex screens, keyboards with clattering keys. And amidst this kingdom of the analog past was a single modern terminal, neatly integrated into an old console. A green LED glowed on it, awaiting input. Daniel connected his laptop with an isolated cable. It took him 3 hours to bypass the primitive but cunning security traps, written in Fortran. When the last barrier fell, the data poured out in a flood. And Daniel understood, Reed was right. This was not just an archive. It was a God's diary. Files flickered across the screen. Thousands of names, photos, biographical summaries, development charts, test results. Subject 402. Status, optimized. Assignment, architect analyst, sociodynamic models. It was his brother. Daniel opened a video file. In the grainy, black and white footage, a 10-year-old boy, astonishingly similar to himself as a child, sat in a white, circular room. On the table before him were not toys, but diagrams of data flows, resembling spider webs. The boy traced them with his finger, muttering something. His eyes were focused, bright, but held no childish joy or curiosity. There was only absorption. He did not look unhappy. He looked complete. A perfect part that had found its mechanism. Then he found Sophie Miller's file. Subject 891. Phase, indoctrination. Potential, cross-modal synesthesia, sound geometry, high-fidelity empathetic resonance. There was a recording, made just a few days ago. Sophie sat at a table, drawing. But she was not drawing a person, but a pattern, a complex, repeating mandala of lines and dots. A metronome sat next to the paper, and with each tick, the line in her drawing changed direction. She was drawing sound. And in the corner of the page, barely visible, was a tiny scratched figure, a person in dark clothes and a large white bird, soaring above him. She's already forgetting the images, Daniel whispered. But her brain is capturing the essence. The bird. A messenger. A symbol. He delved deeper, into the master document titled, The Stability Equation. It was not a manifesto of evil. It was a dry, mathematical report. The author, or authors, argued that human history was a history of chaotic bursts caused by the suboptimal allocation of cognitive resources. Geniuses were born in the wrong place at the wrong time. Talents perished in meaningless conflicts. The solution. Early identification of critical variables, children with special thought patterns, and their optimization, placing them in a controlled environment where they were cultivated not as creators, but as controllers. Architects who, from behind the scenes, through economics, information flows, and political technologies, maintain the world in a state of stable, manageable equilibrium. No wars, but no leaps forward either. No famine, but no abundance that leads to idleness. It was not a utopia. It was a garden where every plant had its designated place, and the gardener ruthlessly pruned anything that deviated from the plan. Daniel read, and he was filled not with outrage, but with a chilling admiration for the monstrous, flawless logic. They were not monsters. They were gardeners who saw humanity as a weed-like but beautiful flower that required constant tending. Suddenly, the terminal vibrated. On the black screen, words began to flash, typing themselves, Daniel Hargreaves. Access granted. We were expecting you. The variable persistence has been factored into the calculation. Daniel froze. A shiver ran through him. He understood everything. Reed had not given him a key to salvation. He had given him an invitation to an interview. Echo 4 was not a lair, it was an examination room. He had just passed the penetration test. And he had been accepted. A voice came from the terminal's speakers. This time, it was not a choir, but a single voice. Young, calm, achingly familiar. Hello, Dan. Took you long enough. Daniel felt the ground give way beneath him. He knew that voice. He had heard it in his nightmares and his oldest, dearest memories for 15 years. Elias, he breathed. Subject 703, the voice corrected. There was no joy, no reproach in it. Only a statement of fact. You've done impressive work. Dad would have been disappointed. But I am impressed. You've proven that the familial attachment variable can be a significant factor, even in subjects with mediocre baseline data. We've added it to the model. What have they done to you? Daniel shouted, jumping to his feet. They erased you, Elias. They took you. I was not taken, Dan. I was found. and freed from the burden of choice, emotions, randomness. I see the structure of the world. I help maintain it. Just as Sophie Miller will help, once her indoctrination is complete. She will regulate empathetic patterns on social networks. Prevent outbreaks of irrational hatred. She will be useful. She is a child. She has a mother who is losing her mind. The mother will be recalibrated. As will you, Daniel. You have a choice. You passed the selection. You can join us. Not as an architect, your potential is limited. But as a custodian. The same offer I once made to Edward Reed. You will maintain the archives. Monitor the periphery. And live in comfort, knowing you serve a higher purpose, the stability of the species. Or. The voice paused for a microsecond. You can return to your former life. But then you will have to forget. Everything. About your brother. About Sophie. About the order. We would not erase this data from systems, Dan. We erase it from your brain. Neatly. Painlessly. You just be a sad man who once lost a brother as a child and now putters around his loft, feeling he's missing something important, but never knowing what. Daniel stood there, fists clenched. Before him was his brother's voice, offering him a choice between being a jailer in a golden cage or a blank slate. And in his pocket was a signal from a woman being systematically erased. He stared at the screen, where his name was blinking. I need to think, he said hoarsely. Of course. You have 48 hours. The coordinates for the meeting will be sent. Do not attempt to find us or warn anyone. We are already everywhere. And, Dan. The voice grew a little quieter, almost human. Does it smell like candy dust in here? I still remember that smell from the park. A funny association, is not it? The connection terminated. Daniel was left alone in the concrete tomb, filled with ghosts. The equation had been laid out. There was only one unknown variable left, his decision. And on that decision depended whether he would become part of the formula or be crossed out of it forever. 48 hours. Daniel did not return to the loft. He drifted, moving between cheap motels, paying for everything in cash, his devices disconnected, their batteries removed. He was a ghost in a world that created its own ghosts. In his backpack lay 3 artifacts, Elias' baby shoe, Reed's envelope, and the burner phone with a single contact, A. He did not sleep. His mind, honed by years of pattern analysis, now focused on a single problem, the choice. Join them. Become a custodian in this flawless, dead garden. Gain access to all the archives, maybe even the files on his father's death. Have the chance, one day, from the inside, to what? Undermine the system. Or just find comfort in the knowledge that he was part of a grand design. Or let them wipe him clean. Return to the loft, to the hum of the servers, to hunting digital phantoms that would suddenly cease to matter. Become an empty space that ached with an unidentifiable loss. He thought of Anna. The woman he'd never seen, but whose whispered help was scratched on the wall of her consciousness just as her daughter had scratched sounds onto paper. She was fighting. Without any algorithms or choices. She simply had not given up. Her struggle was irrational, inefficient, human. And in that irrationality was a wild, primal truth that was absent from the perfect logic of the equation. 2 hours before the deadline, a message arrived on the burner phone. Coordinates. Not a remote location, but an address in a Boston suburb, a modern glass and steel business center, the kind that housed hedge funds and tech startups. Entrance through the parking garage, level B, a door with a keypad. The code was included. Daniel arrived 15 minutes early. He sat in his truck, watching the entrance. People in business suits came out, laughing, smoking. The world of ordinary concerns. None of them knew that in the basement of this building, it was perhaps being decided whether he would remain a person or become a footnote. He went inside. A clean, empty concrete garage. A door with a digital panel. He entered the code. The door slid aside noiselessly. Inside was not a room, but a white cube. The floor, walls, and ceiling were matte white, without a single shadow, without a single seam. A single chair stood in the center. Opposite it was a blank wall. The air was sterile, odorless. "Sit down, Daniel," said Elias's voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Daniel sat. His heart was hammering in his throat. Where are you? Everywhere. And nowhere. This is just an interface. Your choice. Daniel took a deep breath. He thought of his father, scratching the symbol on the token. Of Reed in his library tomb. Of Anna, scratching the wallpaper in Vermont. They had all seen the monster. And they had all lost. But they had seen. "I see a not join you," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "And I would not let you erase my memory." An image materialized on the white wall before him. It was an observation room. Behind one-way glass sat Anna Miller. She was in the same kind of white room he was, but her hands were gently secured to the armrests of her chair. On her head was a helmet with flickering lights. Her face was relaxed, almost smiling. Evelyn stood beside her, a hand on her shoulder. "Anna Miller is in the final stage of recalibration," Elias's voice was dispassionate. "In 40 minutes, her memories of her daughter will be definitively packaged as a traumatic construct and isolated. She will find peace. If you refuse, the process will be accelerated. You will witness her healing. And then it will be your turn. This is not a threat, Daniel. It is a demonstration of efficiency." Daniel jumped up. "Stop this. You have no right. Right is an agreement. We are the ones who uphold the agreement of stability. Her suffering is inefficient. Her current state is a glitch. We are fixing the glitch." Daniel clenched his fists. He was trapped. As helpless as Anna. And then he remembered. Not an algorithm, not a line of code. He remembered the shoe. The bone that remembers. "Elias," he said, his voice now trembling not with fear, but with something else. "Remember when you lost that shoe at the zoo? Right by the flamingo enclosure. You cried so hard Dad bought you ice cream, even though it was November. You said the flamingos stole your shoe to make a nest. And for a whole month, we kept going back to watch the flamingos, looking for your little brown shoe in their nests." Silence fell in the white room. A long, taut silence. On the screen, Anna's face twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. "The ice cream was strawberry," Elias's voice finally said. But there was a microscopic crack in it. Not an emotion. A glitch in the data stream. That is irrelevant information. It's not information, Elias. Daniel insisted, walking toward the wall as if he could pass through it. It's a memory. Ours. You ate that ice cream and your whole face was covered in pink. Mom laughed. Do you remember Mom's laugh? It sounded like a little bell. You always said so. On the screen, Anna suddenly took a deep, shuddering breath. Her eyes flew open. They were filled with horror and clarity. She saw Evelyn, saw the helmet on her head. "No," she whispered. "No, get away from me. Sophie. My little girl in pink." She began to struggle, to thrash. Evelyn frowned, her impassive mask slipping for a moment to reveal irritation. "Increase the feed," she said to someone unseen. "They not just erasing her, Elias." Daniel shouted. "They erasing you. The part of you that felt, that remembered the flamingos. They left only the function. You not an architect. You a ghost in their machine." Silence. Then Elias's voice spoke again, but now it had a faint, digital tremor. "Emotions are inefficient. They lead to errors. To pain. They lead to life." Daniel countered. "Pain is a sign that you still alive. That you not an algorithm. They stole your pain, Elias. And your joy. They stole a mother's child. Does your stability equation allow for such an inefficiency, to steal people's very essence?" On the screen, Anna tore one hand free from the weak restraint. She slapped at the helmet, ripping it from her head. Evelyn jumped back, her face contorted. "Subject is losing control. Sedate immediately." But it was too late. Anna, weeping and screaming, was now flailing around the room, tearing off sensors, her cries filled with such a primal, animal agony that they cut through the screen and sliced at the nerves. In Daniel's white room, the light flickered. "Error." Elias's voice said, and now it was clearly the voice of a system reporting a failure. "Indoctrination protocol for subject 891 interrupted by external, emotional resonance. Unforeseen variable." The door to the white cube slid open noiselessly. "Leave, Daniel," said the familiar, yet now strangely weary voice of Elias. "UVE introduced noise into the equation. Unpredictable noise. The system will be recalculating probabilities. You have a window. And Anna. Her protocol is suspended. Her resistance has been entered into the model as an anomaly. Her further processing has been deemed cost inefficient. She will be released. Tagged. Under observation. Now go. Before they recalculate everything." Daniel did not wait to be told twice. He bolted from the white cube, ran through the garage, jumped into his pickup, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, the business center shrank, becoming just another glass box in a city of boxes. Anna was released 2 days later. No explanation. She was taken by taxi to the nearest town, dropped off at a bus station, and handed a purse with her old belongings, her passport, and a small amount of cash. No discharge papers. No goodbyes. Evelyn and Mark had vanished as if they had never existed. She was a shadow of her former self. But within that shadow, a small, unquenchable flame burned, the fragments of truth she had saved, and a rage for everything they had tried to take from her. She remembered the message sent into the void. And she waited. Daniel, using all his skills to remain invisible, made contact. Burner phones, encrypted messages. They spoke in whispers, like conspirators. He did not tell her everything, but enough. About the system. About the garden. About how Sophie was alive, but being remade. It was worse than her being gone. But it also offered a ghostly, insane hope. They agreed to meet. In the only place that made sense. Cedar Valley Park. At dawn, by the seashell fountain. Where it all began. Daniel arrived first. The park was empty, shrouded in a pre-dawn mist. The swings swayed in the wind, empty. He waited, hands buried in his jacket pockets, feeling as though they could be behind every tree, every corner of the pavilion. The observers. Anna emerged from the fog like a phantom. She had lost weight, her eyes were huge in her gaunt face. But there was steel in her gaze. They stood opposite each other, two islands of pain in a sea of artificial well-being. "They let me remember," Anna said softly. "Why?" "Because your resistance surprised them. It did not fit the model. They need time to study it, to recalculate. We an experiment for them now. Two glitches in the matrix. Where is my daughter?" "I do not know for sure. Switzerland, maybe. In a closed campus. They teaching her to be a regulator. An architect of feelings. We have to find her. Get her out." Daniel gave a bitter laugh. "How?" "It's us against a system that runs the world. That has people like my brother. Who is probably watching us right now. Then why are we here?" Desperate anger edged Anna's voice. "To see each other. To know we not crazy. To." Daniel fell silent. He wanted to say, to decide what to do, but the words were not there. Their eyes met. There was no love in them, not even friendship. There was recognition. The recognition of a fellow prisoner, a fellow broken but unyielding piece of flesh and spirit in a world that sought to replace both with pure, efficient function. At that moment, every light in the park, the old ones and the new smart lamps, flashed in unison, once. A brief but unmistakable flicker. It did not look like a power surge. It looked like a wink. They both understood. The meeting was over. They had been seen. They had been allowed to see each other. And that was it. Without another word, Anna nodded. She turned and dissolved back into the fog, in the opposite direction from which she had come. Daniel stood for another minute, staring at the empty space where she had been. Then he took a flash drive from his pocket, the one on which, before meeting Elias, he had dumped everything he knew, the archives from Echo 4, his decryptions, the coordinates of the Boston lab. Everything that could serve as evidence. He had not given it to Anna. That would have been a death sentence for them both. He walked to the fountain, stuck his hand into the ice-cold water, and found the grate of the drain. He carefully pushed the flash drive between the bars. It fell into the dark dampness, among the wet leaves and coins tossed for good luck. Let it lie there. Maybe someday another madman like him would find it. Or the rain would wash it into the sewer. It did not matter anymore. He had done what he could. He had brought a mother the truth. And he had shown the system that even an algorithm can glitch when you introduce a variable called love, even if it's love for a ghost. ###*** epilogue. 1 year later. ***shot 1, Anna. She lives in Seattle. She has a prestigious job as a content manager for a major tech company specializing in digital wellness. She has a new husband, an architect, a kind and slightly boring man. They have a beautiful apartment overlooking the bay. She looks composed, successful, even happy. Sometimes, passing the window of an expensive children's store, she stops, staring at a mannequin in a pink dress. For a second, a look of empty bewilderment crosses her face. Then she shivers, gives a small, apologetic shrug as if shooing away a pesky fly, and walks on. At night, she sometimes wakes up to find her hand searching for something in the darkness beside her. She does not know what. And she falls back asleep. Shot 2, Sophie. She is 10 years old now. She stands at a podium in a lightwood amphitheater somewhere in the Swiss Alps. Before her is an assembly of men and women in impeccable but understated suits. She is delivering a speech in flawless French on the dynamic balancing of emotional patterns in global social networks. Her voice is clear and crisp, devoid of childish inflections. Her gaze sweeps over the audience, cold, analytical, free of any excitement or joy. She is the future. An instrument. On the lapel of her blazer is a small, almost invisible gold pin, a cross within a circle. After her speech, her mentor approaches, a man with graying temples and attentive eyes. The report on the mother anomaly is closed. The subject is stable, no longer a threat. Sophie nods, her expression unchanged. And the brother variable. Assigned to a junior analyst position in the archival department. Performance is satisfactory. Emotional resonance is no longer detected. Sophie nods again. That evening, alone in her room with a view of the mountains, she takes not the pin, but a crumpled piece of paper from a hidden pocket in her backpack. On it, drawn in a child's hand, is a large white bird and, barely visible, a stroke of pink below. She looks at the drawing for a few seconds, her face perfectly still. Then she carefully crumples the paper into a tiny ball and swallows it, washing it down with water. The ritual is complete. On the desk before her, a monitor lights up with a new equation. Shot 3, Daniel. He sits in a dark office. Not the loft. The room is smaller, windowless, the walls lined not with servers but with shelves of archival boxes. Before him is a single monitor. On it, a frozen image, a frame from the park in Cedar Valley. A little girl in pink takes a stranger's hand. Daniel is dressed in a simple dark turtleneck. His face is barely visible in the dim light. He picks up the mouse. The cursor moves to the area with the girl and the man. He highlights it. Green pixels, the masking algorithm, run along the outline of the selection. He right-clicks. From the drop-down menu, he selects Delete and Restore Background, Auto-Generate. He clicks. In the frame, the girl and the man vanish. In their place appears an empty path, sunbeams on the asphalt, a pair of pigeons. The picture becomes perfect, peaceful. Nothing disturbs the idyllic Sunday. Daniel leans back in his chair. His hand reaches across the desk, finding not the mouse, but an old, scuffed child's shoe, a size 11. He holds it for a few seconds, then gently places it in the bottom drawer of the desk, which closes softly with a magnetic latch. On the desk next to the monitor lies his new ID badge. On it is his photo, his name, and his title, D. Hargreaves. Junior Archivist. Sector 4. And in the corner of the badge, as small as a freckle, is the same symbol. The cross in the circle. He made his choice. Not to be a custodian. To be an executioner of memory. To have access. To one day, maybe, find a weakness in the algorithm. Or just to be close to the little that was left of his brother, the dusty archives where a boy who believed flamingos stole shoes was forever sealed. He looks at the sanitized video. His face in the darkness is expressionless. But in his eyes, if anyone could see them, that same noise still burned. The unpredictable variable. A quiet, imperceptible glitch in a flawless system. Narrator's voice a whisper, sings song, like a lullaby or an incantation. Some children disappear not because they see not be found, but because the world is too fragile to let them remain themselves. And some truths are erased not because they are false, but because they are too dangerous for the perfect equation we call peace. Asterisk asterisk the Amber Alert never came that day. Because the system never makes a mistake. It simply makes a choice. And it chooses those who will one day learn to choose for it. Asterisk, the screen fades to black. In the absolute silence that follows for several seconds, a sound is heard, a short, sharp, mechanical click. Like a latch closing. Or the shutter of a camera. Or someone pulling a trigger. Asterisk asterisk the end asterisk asterisk.